Welcome back to IGN at Gamescom now. I'm joined by Kryzysztof Monkiewicz, founder at Event Horizon, to discuss Dark Envoy. So tell us, what is Dark Envoy?
Thanks for inviting me. So Dark Envoy is our second game. It's a difficult genre, so we're trying to mix RPG, a typical RPG, with a game which has a lot of XCOM in there. So there's a strategic layer, there's a free world exploration, and most importantly for us, there will be a choice. We want to make sure that the player get engaged into the gameplay because we offer him a lot of choices.
Great. We're going to talk about choice. We're definitely going to talk about combat, but I want to start off with the world, the narrative, and the setting. It's pretty unique. Would you quantify it as steampunk?
Well, it's a mixture of steampunk and magic. So we're mixing up magic and technology. Basically, the world setting is we explore the world which is inhabited by the old races, so which have a strong affinity to magic, and then humans who are relatively newcomers to the land. They bring technology, and the two forces collide, clash, and now we get into the final stages of the conflict.
Speaking of conflict, can you talk about the combat? Is it turn-based? Is it real-time? How does it work?
So here we always try to innovate, bring something new, as we did with our first title. So here, when you find a location, when you fly across the map and you find a location you want to explore, you select your party, you compose your party, picking the classes which you think would be the best fit for the given area, given challenge, and then you explore first the map in the real time. The enemies you will face will be difficult, will be strong. So if you head straight into them without any preparation, you can lose. So the idea is that in the real time you explore a little bit, you understand what enemies you will be facing, you will understand their patrol routes, you can sneak around them, you can lay traps, prepare an ambush. And once you are ready, then you can trigger combat. And then the combat is a turn-based combat.
Gotcha. So we were seeing a little bit of dialogue there, obviously interacting with NPCs, building relationships, and kind of furthering the narrative of your characters. Really important in RPGs. So what are we looking at in terms of player choice when it comes to interacting with other NPCs?
So we start as a pair of siblings, and they are just regular people like you and me. So they have breakfast in the morning, then they head out to the desert to hunt for old temples.
I was with you on the first part. I definitely have breakfast every morning, but I can't remember the last time I was in desert. Please continue.
So, and then suddenly they're pulled into a big plot, which will decide the outcome of the world. And we can side up with a human part representing technology. We can side up with the second faction, other faction representing old races, or we can decide not to side with any of them because neither side is good and just, and shape the world to our own liking.
Gotcha. I noticed that there are these kind of golden circles, areas around the characters. What do those represent?
So they represent the detection range. So whenever you enter in, the enemies enter your range, then the combat will be triggered. So now you can see that for this mission we picked up a stealthy assassin. He's in stealth, so he can just wander the map, scouting the area, understanding where the enemies are, before the rest of the team joins.
I like that a lot.
Fight.
And you can choose to leave members of your party behind?
Yeah, of course. In the final game, the party will consist of 4 players. For this, we just narrow it down to 3. This is the first time we showcase the game, so we didn't want to make it interesting, too difficult. So here, I sneak behind. They don't see me. I see them. I know where they are. This is actually a PvP, so the opponent is human here.
What?
This
really? That's so cool.
It's
multiplayer here.
It's a multiplayer as well. So we actually have also a quite interesting game mode, which is called Player versus World. So you can play a co-op, you can split your party, and then the tactical part of the game will be super important because player number 1 can take 2 stealthy characters and sneak behind the enemies, lay traps, while the player number 2 prepares the ambush for them when they patrol the route. And then you trigger. What's important is that you fight on your own terms. You trigger the combat when you want and not when you're surprised. So here I'm just trying to understand what is the best position. I see them, they don't see me because I'm sneaking. The range of detection is smaller.
How does that work in terms of triggering combat when you want PvP? It's, you know.
So what we can do, if we stand still behind the cover for a longer period of time, we enter something what we call ambush mode. And then when the enemies enter the ambush mode, then we get bonus in the first round. We get a higher initiative. So we can, for example, eliminate the strongest opponent in the first turn before second player have a chance to react. So now I'm trying to position my troops here, but the player number 2 sends something, and unfortunately in a second, he went into my assassin that I left unprotected. I didn't put him in a cover mode. So now the combat is triggered. And then this is the first turn. We call it a placement turn. So you can move far distance. You have 1 action point. You can use it to attack, or you can use it to move. So now assassins, they deal a lot of damage, but they are very squishy. So I decided to withdraw him behind the cover, so the opponent doesn't have a line of sight, and I position my other troops behind covers, low covers, and high covers as well.
Gotcha. Just for clarity, before the combat began, you and the opponent were kind of jockeying for position in terms of initiative, in terms of getting the team together.
Yes.
Gotcha. And can you tell me about the classes on display here and how they're going to perform in combat differently?
So in the final game, we plan to have at least 15 different classes. So there would be 4 basic classes: melee type warrior, then ranger, which is a typical DPS, range DPS. Then we have an engineer, which is also DPS range, but more of a support function, and adept, which is a magic user. And then each of the class can later specialize in one of the 5 skill trees. So you can mix the skill trees, or you can specialize in one of them. So, for example, assassin, I can specialize in the assassin skill tree, and then at the end I can unlock a really powerful ultimate abilities of the assassin that would be unavailable to me otherwise. Or I can mix assassin with spell swords, and then I can augment my basic attacks with magic abilities.
Great. We're watching the combat here. We can see the characters taking turns up there at the top. If you see anything on the screen in terms of a really cool ability you want to highlight, please feel free to talk about it. But I just want to talk about the larger world for a second. So there's a Skyship. Can you tell me about the significance and what that means in terms of gameplay?
So this is the Skyship idea. Well, what we want to create is a non-linear game, where we give player a freedom how he wants to play the game. So he has a main objective, he can progress with the main storyline, he can engage in the side storylines, he can recruit NPCs with their own storylines. But apart from that, if player wants to take a time and explore the world, we leave it up to him. So Skyship is your means of transportation. The land is really great, it's really vast. The areas are really diverse, so you have deserts, you have forests, you have shatterlands, you have volcano area. And the Skyship also serves as your base of operations, so you can train your champions there, you can research technologies, you can research new weapons, exotic weapons, you can research different skills, you can craft items. Whenever your Skyship gets destroyed by the evil guy, which is the end game objective, then the game is over. So you have to be also really careful and
interesting.
And not
so the
get
game ends
exposed.
when your Skyship is destroyed. Can you tell me how that affects replayability? How replayable is Dark Envoy?
So that's also what we will try to do our best, that the game has a very high replayability value. So all the locations will be procedurally generated, apart from the certain key locations. The cities will be in the same place, but all the dungeons, all the areas, all the points of interest will spawn randomly on the map. When you enter the combat, when you enter the location, this is the temple, the layout also will be randomly procedurally generated. There will be a large pool of quests, and in one playthrough, player will not be able to experience 100% of the game. By 100% of the game, what I mean is some of the classes will be very rare. You will have to find them, you will have to do long chain quests. Some of the locations, like a sunken city or a hidden city in the volcano, will not be possible for you to find in a given playthrough. So what we hope is that once player blitzed through the game the first time, which would take around 15 to 20 hours, he would find a lot of content to that he didn't experience, that he didn't miss, that he missed, and he would decide to play the game again. Maybe going, making different choices. Maybe instead of becoming an evil guy at the end, he would choose the different path, the path of good and just.
Great, so there's kind of a morality spectrum. That's very interesting. Can you talk a bit about the antagonists and kind of the conflict that's inherent to the story and what's driving the player forward?
So the setting is quite complex. As I mentioned, it's basically technology fights with magic. Technology is represented by human empire. Magic is represented by the alliance of the old races, and this is a conflict that rages on for a few hundred years. Humans are newcomers to the land. They escape, they are refugees from their own land. We don't know what is it about. This is one of the history, one of the stories that we discover that perhaps would impact our choices or our alignment towards the humans. Our final objective, I mean, I wouldn't want to spoil too much, but in the beginning, as I mentioned, we are just normal people hunting the desert and so on. And then in the beginning, we get pulled into the conflict, not by our choice. So we are driven by the revenge. Members of our family get killed. And we suspect, or all the evidence point out, that the person responsible for that is the emperor or the guy who's leading the human empire. So we set out on the path of revenge. So basically, we just want to get to his location and eliminate him, taking his place.
When can we expect to see Dark Envoy out, and what platforms is it coming out?
So we plan to do PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. We also consider Switch, seeing how much Switch is popular. Definitely the game should be playable on Switch. In terms of the release date, this is end of 2020, so it's still a long time to go, but we just want to release the game when it's ready and not one day before.
Well, we're eager to play it, so whenever it's ready, we can't wait for it. Dark Envoy, very interesting stuff. Kryzysztof, thank you so much for joining us. Don't go anywhere. Gamescom on IGN returns after this.